You are listening to Radio Maria Canada. We now present the Health Hub, hosted by Kathy Biasi.
Welcome to the Health Hub on Radio Maria Canada, exploring cutting-edge health and wellness information and therapies, helping you to take your health to the next level. I am your host, Kathy Biasi, and I'm a holistic nutritionist and a professional cancer coach. Cancer Revolution is a new docuseries coming to us in September 2023. It relates advances in cancer research from the 1920s to present, as told by the original researchers, their biographers, and contemporaries. And the creators of Cancer Revolution are Maggie and Brad Jones. Maggie and Brad's life changed when the month she turned 40, Maggie was diagnosed with terminal cancer and received a prognosis of less than a year. She's been cancer-free for 4 years now and has dedicated her life to sharing the evidence-based treatments that so dramatically improved her survival and quality of life. Over the course of her healing, Maggie was fortunate to establish friendships with scientists and practitioners, changing the cancer paradigm, and has become a prominent voice in the metabolic cancer treatment community. Maggie and her filmmaker husband, Brad, are the force behind the award-winning docuseries featuring some of the leading scientists and practitioners on the metabolic theory of cancer and associated therapies. Maggie and Brad are wonderful. Just right off the top, it's wonderful to listen to them. They are not preaching. They are bringing forth information. In the show, we talk about what the Cancer Revolution is about and how Maggie's cancer journey inspired this series, what the metabolic theory of cancer is, and how Maggie continues to use metabolic therapies for her care. This is an inspiring show. I do hope that you can stay tuned with us. We will be back in just a few minutes to talk with Maggie and Brad Jones.
You are listening to Radio Maria Canada. We now continue with the program, The Health Hub, hosted by Kathy Biasi.
Welcome back, everybody. Today's show has been recorded. No opportunity for calling in. Please do follow us on our social sites. We are on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and we are at the Health Hub RMC on those locations. Maggie, Brad, welcome to the show. It's an honor to have you here.
Kathy, thank you so much. We're so thrilled to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kathy.
The two of you have made such inroads in a relatively short period of time. It's actually astounding to me. And the reason it is astounding to me is because I am sort of in this circle that you are in. We have interviewed some of the guests on the Cancer Revolution that we're going to talk about. And I think we need to start off, Maggie, with your story, because I think that will really give people an understanding as to how the two of you have been able to curate, produce, and bring to people that need knowledge and understanding all that you've been able to do in such a short period of time. So Maggie, take the show.
Wow. Thank you. My story really began in 2018. Brad and I had moved from our home in Los Angeles to Hong Kong, kind of on a whim. It was 1 month before my 40th birthday, and it was the same month that I was diagnosed with terminal stage 4 lung cancer, which by then had spread to my brain, dozens of lymph nodes around my chest, neck, abdomen, my eyes, how it was finally diagnosed. And I was given about 6 to 8 months to live. That's the standard prognosis for lung cancer spread to the brain. And obviously, I was surprised. It was non-smokers lung cancer. I felt like I was living a relatively healthy life. I had a healthy food blog at the time, in fact. But I knew something had been wrong. I had felt it during the move from LA to Hong Kong, but there's too much to do. And there was so much stress that I just waved it away. But it was when I was finally going blind in one ride that Brad convinced me to go see an ophthalmologist. And this poor eye doctor was the one who had to tell me the next day that I was going to die of cancer at 40. And so obviously it had a happy ending. By 2019, I'd done all the research on the metabolic theory of cancer. I found a complete change in my lifestyle that I hadn't done to survive. I was expecting my cancer to be completely incurable, but I wanted to live in the meantime. And just that desire to improve my lifestyle and appreciate these last few months, I guess it helped contribute to my conventional medicine. And here I am. And Brad and I realized that this information has been peer-reviewed, published. It is known evidence-based scientific research that just hasn't made it out. And a big part of this is that there are studies, it takes an average of 17 years for medical research to actually make it to a clinical setting. And obviously, it's going to be faster for high profit drugs like Viagra or Prozac, but something that is lifestyle based, that doesn't make any money for anybody, it's just a lot harder to get that information out without people paying for the marketing. Totally understandable. Nobody's a bad guy here. It's just the way that our system works.
Yeah.
And very fortunately, Brad is an editor and a filmmaker and completely talented. And he had the idea after a couple of years after my healing that...
Yeah. Actually, before you get to that, I was just going to say, so Maggie had found all these amazing things and wanted to sort of share them with the world. She had a pretty, I was going to say a heavily trafficked blog, a pretty good Instagram site, but she tried to do some cancer coaching, and that was becoming frustrating because she could only work with one or two, well, I don't know, maybe four people at a time. But just the reach, she was like, this just needs to be bigger. This needs to be more. So that's where I came in.
Yeah. And even just the emotional toll that it took on me. You can imagine, Kathy, in the audience, that having, 4 people a day contact you saying, I'm dying of cancer. You did something. Please help me. It was more than I could handle. And I still needed to focus on my continued healing. So here we have Brad, the hero, stepping in. And this happened after I'd been contacted by a wonderful nutritionist in Scandinavia whose brother had been diagnosed with GBM, glioblastoma multiforme, which is a devastating brain cancer, with about a year to live with standard of treatment, with chemotherapy and radiation. But she knew the power of some of these therapies from her training. But after her brother's doctor sent him home saying there's nothing more we can do, she desperately wanted him to start taking up some of these therapies that have been proven, like a ketogenic diet, fasting, off-label drugs. But because his doctor didn't know about it, he told him it didn't matter. And her brother, Marius, ended up just wanting to eat pizza and beer and enjoy the life that he had left, which we have absolutely no judgment against. But unfortunately, his life didn't last long. And we decided to dedicate this documentary to him and to all the people whose lives could be prolonged, whose journey could be less painful, and whose overall outcome could be improved just by knowing this information. And whether they choose to act on it or not, doesn't matter. It's their choice. But we just want them to know.
There's always, you have to leave space. You know that I am a cancer coach myself, so I understand where you're coming from. You have to leave space for people's individuality. You have to leave space for people's mindset. Obviously, your mindset was one that pushed you into this direction. And you're unique, right? Because you turned it around so very quickly. What led you? There are so many different avenues to go down. Okay. You're diagnosed. First of all, your brain is going in 9 million directions. You're thrown into the medical system. I can't believe you had enough time to stop, take a breath, and do this. Okay. What led you down the metabolic theory of cancer?
First, Kathy, I cannot thank you enough for mentioning that. Yes, all people are unique. And what works for some, like me, is not going to work for everyone. But the one thing that does work for everybody is believing and having hope. I think that will improve your outcome, whether it's prolonged life or just better quality of life.
Yep.
And so for me, the first avenue I did go down was, oh, well, I'm going to die. I just want to be a good patient. And I wanted to make Brad proud of me and my doctors proud of me. And thank God that lasted about 5 days. And then I started reading and just reading things like Radical Remission by Dr. Kelly Turner, and even really light things like Crazy Sexual Cancer by Kirsty Carr. But then I started reading more and more into PubMed and just some of these recent articles that have been published. At the time they were recent, and understanding that there's a lot of evidence about nutrition. And in my very personal case, I chose to follow a plant-based ketogenic diet. I was born and raised vegetarian. I know from my genetics that, a lot of meat is not good for me personally, but I've also talked to people who've had wonderful success with carnivore or with a more paleo meat-based diet. But I knew that for me, the biggest thing is controlling my sugar intake, controlling the quality of food that I consume. And then, personally, fasting, it's just been incredible for me. And once I experienced the results, I knew I couldn't go back, whether it was going to cure me or not, which of course, no diet is going to cure cancer. And the example I'd love to give is I've had 2 rounds of brain radiation, one for the first 2 tumors in November 2018, and another one, same possible, for 2 different tumors in April of 2019.
Yeah.
And my gosh, same hospital, same radiation technician. The first one, I was vomiting, sweating on the couch for 3 weeks. I couldn't go into work. It was just dreadful. The second one, I fasted for 3 days in advance, and I ended up walking home from the hospital that Friday night and going to work on Monday. And that was the difference that I had, is maybe I'd had a couple of months of eating a better diet in advance, maybe a better mindset. But fasting, I learned, is just something that makes me feel so good. And I know it's not that way for everybody, but it's something that Brad's joined me in, and that we will never stop. Monday's our fasting day, and we're recording this on a Monday, and we feel great.
Just kind of, just a little, relatable fact is that there's since you can fast and it, improves your radiation. One of the first set of doctors that's starting to sort of jump on board ketogenic diets and fasting are radiologists, because it's improving it's noticeably improving their outcomes more than other doctors. So they're sort of the first adopters at this point. It's just kind of interesting.
It is funny. I agree with you there, because, a lot of people don't know what they don't know. So if they've been able to align themselves with somebody in this space, then this information may be disseminated to them. And again, we're back to individuals. And so there are some people who absolutely cannot fast before. There are situations, there are health spectrums where people cannot fast. But this one particular thing, and we're going to talk about other things too, but just to ring the same bell you're ringing, this one particular modality, the fasting before, people who have never been through treatment come out of treatment saying, I didn't like it. It wasn't too bad. And then you see the other people who have not gone down a type of integrative path. I experience this personally. And it is, when you can find the practitioner, when you can find the therapy, which is what you guys are spreading the news about, it can be so altering, and you don't know what you don't know. And so but you knew because you had the one type, and then you introduced the therapy. So it's just such a big bravo to you for bringing all of this stuff to the forefront, because you're right. I deal with 1 or 2 people a day, and I only get out that far. And it's so important that people, and I always say, ask the questions, just ask the questions. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Where did you sort of begin in contact? Like, not everybody's friends with all their doctors, but where did you kind of go to the next level in contacting these people? And why did they say yes to you guys?
Yes. I'll start this, and maybe Brad can fill in. I'm aggressive. I don't know how to say it. I had less than a year, and my previous life was in journalism, media. I was a media executive. And so I was a little bit used to just reaching out and seeing what happens. And in that first year of my diagnosis, we went to conferences. For those who don't know my background, I was deeply into allopathic medicine. I completely rejected anything that doctors hadn't told me. But it was just the fact that I was reading all of this in medical journals, and I realized they're not telling me because they don't know. It's not some conspiracy. It's just not out there.
That's absolutely right.
So we went to these conferences, medical conferences, where people were talking about it. It's new research. And we're able to meet a couple of incredible leaders in the field. And that was my first year. And when I was still alive, unexpectedly after that year, I continued to email saying, just thank you. First of all, I don't expect to live forever, but I love this quality of life I have right now. And then conference after conference, take it from there with our first two.
Well, I mean, so a couple of the people that we met early on were Travis Christofferson. He was part of a group that was Care Oncology. And so we met him and Dr. Chuck Meekin, that was Maggie's sort of remote oncologist. And then through Travis, we met Dr. Seyfried. And so when this idea of doing a documentary to sort of simply, relate the things that Maggie did or the theory behind it, we were like, well, hey, if we can get Travis and hopefully Seyfried on board, then we felt like we had a real shot. It would be worth making, right? If they shut us down, I'm not sure if we would have continued much beyond that. But to our pleasant surprise, Travis said yes right away. He, put in a good call to Dr. Seyfried for us. And then we were kind of off and running. Once we had the two of them, those two great trusted names, we were very lucky to get everyone else on board, Dr. Jason Fung, Naisha Winters, a slew of other people. We even roped in for the other side. We roped in Dr. Robert Weinberg to help tell, the genetic theory of cancer. So it just kind of snowballed. Yeah.
And for listeners, Dr. Weinberg was one of the pioneers in the somatic mutation or genetic theory of cancer. And he wrote the most widely cited article, The Hallmarks of Cancer, which you may have read about. Yeah. And the incredible thing is, from some of the other scientists that we've talked to, we're seeing that the genetic theory doesn't completely explain all the hallmarks, and that instead the metabolic theory, which we don't know is right, but it happens to explain a lot of these hallmarks. And just to emphasize that the genetic theory is just a theory, just like the metabolic theory is, the atavistic. There are so many. And the real message, I think, of our series is that we don't know anything. Science has to continue to evolve. And anybody who thinks that our research into cancer in the last 60 years has been done, that it's over, that's just a mistake. And whatever the treatments that arise out of this are, cancer evolves, and cancer research must evolve.
Absolutely. And I think what you're setting the stage again is, once you empower people with knowledge, they can go down whatever path they want to go down. They can figure out what resonates. But empowering people with knowledge offers them the opportunity for hope. And to me, it's that marriage of the two that can move people beyond the designation, the diagnosis, the terminality of it, and the definitive end lines.
Kathy, I just want to say you have nailed it. That is exactly what we're trying to do. We are not trying to preach any kind of particular viewpoint. We are just trying to say, hey, here's some information. It might be helpful to you.
And it is, and that's what people are looking for. We can talk about, we can go in so many directions, but the whole idea of an integrative approach to health is to give people their space, to give people the opportunity to talk, to give people the opportunity to engage with their practitioners, to try and expand their knowledge. And to me, if you offer people hope, you are offering them a first-line treatment in any disease that they have. I just I can't get over. There are lots of docuseries out there. There are. And some I align with and some I don't. And the reason, most I don't, I have to say. I do have to say most I don't, because I work with people
out there, right?
There is. And I work with people that are going through the allopathic space like you. You don't want to be told that chemotherapy is going to kill you. You don't want to be told that. You want to be told that, along with my standard care of treatment that I've chosen, how can I help? How can I create health? And this is what you're doing. And this is why I've never had a docuseries producer and producers on the show, for this specific reason, because I stay away from the fear. I try not to create more fear. Even with nutrition, I'm sure you have to take little steps. You don't walk in and saying everything you're doing is wrong, wipe your cupboards out, and we got to fill them with tofu and green leafy vegetables, right? It's like, you know what? Try this. See how it resonates. Stage 1 of treatment may not be working for you with this. Try this. I think it's wonderful. What I want to do is take a break now. We're a little bit short in the first half because what I want to ask you is might take a lot of time here. So I don't want to get it. What we'll lay the stage here is I want to talk about what the metabolic theory of cancer is, just general outlines of the metabolic theory of cancer. And then what some of the struggles you may have had in producing the documentary. And of course, we're going to get into all the timelines and everything. So everyone will be back in just a couple of minutes to continue our great, great conversation here with Maggie and Brad.
You are listening to The Health Hub here on Radio Maria Canada, a Catholic voice wherever you are. To contact us and be a part of the show, email thh@radiomaria.ca. We now continue with the program. Here once again is your host, Kathy Biasi.
Welcome back, everybody. We are speaking with Maggie and Brad Jones. They are the creators of Cancer Revolution. We're going to get really knee deep, maybe shoulder deep, hopefully, into this docuseries. And as I said to you guys, I am very, very particular with who I align with. So very, very pleased and honored to have you guys on the show. I think before we start actually talking about the docuseries and all the guests that you have, maybe it's time to understand the metabolic theory of cancer. You certainly don't have to do a textbook edition, but just just so people understand where this is coming from.
Sure. I'll take this one. Is that cool? Yeah. The metabolic theory of cancer is basically this idea that cancer cells to make energy, they stop using respiration, which is a very highly efficient way of generating energy in the mitochondria. And they instead use glycolysis, which is fermentation in the cytoplasm of the cell. And what that does is to do this, they need lots of glucose, lots of sugar. So, and this is prevalent in like 70 to 90% of cancers. And it's actually highly prevalent, like 90% in late stage cancers. So the more and more malignant a cancer gets, the more it exhibits this this type of energy creation. And it's called the Warburg effect. And so that if you hear Otto Warburg or you hear about the scientist at all who won a Nobel Prize for some other work that he did in the 30s, that's where that comes from. And so the idea when you sort of stretch that out into a therapy is that, well, if you can reduce the amount of glucose that you have in your system, you can kind of, and I'm doing quotation marks here with my fingers, you can kind of starve the cancer. That's a little bit of a misnomer because you can never completely eliminate the amount of glucose you have in your body. Your liver can actually even make more glucose. So, people, when they say starve cancer, what they're talking about is just reducing the amount of glucose they have in their system. And one of the things that people don't know is that we are actually kind of like a hybrid vehicle. We can use either glucose or, like that as a fuel, or we can use ketones. And so what happens is if you go on a low carb restrictive diet and you're taking in maybe more fat and protein, your body will produce more ketones than sugar molecules. And what ends up happening is that your regular cells can use these ketones for fuel, no problem. They can switch over very easily. But your cancer cells can't. Your cancer cells can only use fermentable fuels, which would be glucose. And there's another one called glutamine that is a pretty heavy one. That one's a little bit harder to restrict, but we're getting a little technical here. But there's this idea that you can actually make a difference in what's going on. And I just want to say, you don't have to believe in the metabolic theory to practice this sort of ketogenic carb restrictive diet and hopefully see some outcomes. But so yeah, that's kind of the main thrust of the metabolic theory of cancer.
And I would just note too that the 3 different therapies that we talk about, 2 are ketogenic dietary therapies, like a therapeutic ketogenic diet, which is not the same as the eat all the bacon and cheese you want, dietary weight loss fad diet. It's something that has been proven and is already used as a standard of care for pediatric epilepsy. So we know it's safe and effective there. There's fasting, which is, of course, ketogenic. You're not taking in any sugars if you're water fasting. And there's also off-label drugs and supplements, which can also interfere with this unique deranged metabolism of cancer cells.
Yeah.
There are others that we just don't have time to talk about in this season, but perhaps in the future, because this area is growing so quickly.
Now, what I want to ask, but because it sort of sets a framework for the next part, this isn't a docuseries on how to cure cancer, is it?
No, it's not. No.
I think that's an important thing to state.
Yeah. Well, I mean, who knows? In the future, maybe it will have been, right?
Yeah, that's right. But the intent is
but
not.
That is not the
that,
intent. No, it is not. No, basically, what's going on in the scientific community right now is the genetic theory of cancer, the idea that there's damage to your genes and they just sort of randomly mutate, and that's how we get cancer. This is a theory. It has been a theory for a long time. But what's happening is that if you go to medical school and you study cancer, this is taught as fact. We talked to so many scientists, and they're just like, unless you seek out this sort of metabolic theory of cancer, these metabolic ideas, you're not going to ever know about them. So most oncologists, it's very hard to talk to them about anything metabolic because they have only learned the genetic side, even though it's just a theory. And so all we're trying to say is in the documentary is just, hey, there's another way of looking at cancer. The way that most people are looking at cancer is not proven. We're not having the best outcomes trying to make drugs following this genetic pathway of cancer. And we are starting to have a little bit of success if we look at trying to do things following the metabolic pathway. So it's just worthy of more inspection, closer inspection.
And Kathy, you brought up the best point before the break that I'm sorry, I also have some brain damage from my cancer. That it's not sadness, it's not without hope. And we decided from the very beginning of producing this that we didn't want to fill it with a bunch of sad cancer patients because everyone knows that cancer is sad and tragic. What we want to do is take it away from this idea that it's all in your genes, it's predestined, you have no control or options, and show people that there is hope and that there are these modalities that give you hope, like exercise, stress reduction, meditation, yoga, diet. Like these things can improve your outcomes. It's not a cure, but it can help profoundly.
You know, I don't think there's anything wrong, and this may be extremely naive of me, but I like to go down this pathway all the time. Cancer is disease. You know, there be heart disease, there can be diabetes. And why can't we manage our disease?
Yeah.
You know,
cancer is a chronic disease.
Yeah, we say this all the time to cancer patients that we bump into, which is just, please don't think of it as like you're cured. No matter how that happens to you, you know, like you're basically so prone to remission. Someone who has cancer, you know, you have to really stay on top of
relapse,
it. Relapse. I'm sorry. Thank you.
And it's true. I mean, you have to be involved and in the game all the time.
Yeah.
And there's just so many positive things with this. Did you have any issues, any hiccups along the way when you were making this documentary, or was it smooth sailing?
Okay, I would just say it definitely took longer than we expected, only because we are so naive. I mean, who thinks that they can create it was a documentary at the beginning. And I guess the first big hiccup was realizing we had too much information for a 90-minute documentary. And after showing it to an incredible panel of practitioners and cancer researchers, they all agreed that we can't cut anything out. And so we decided to turn it into the series.
I'd say that's really our only setback is just, like the, I don't know, the tools that we have, right? Like time, money, you know, people, right? You got to work with what you have. And that one screening where, you know, we were like, so what do you guys think? Can we just like sort of take this and scrunch it down into 90 minutes. And everybody was like, no, are you crazy? Like, yeah, like put in more.
Yeah.
On a miracle night, I would get very frustrated that we weren't done yet. But then Brad points out, if we knew how hard this would have been at the beginning, we never would have started. And so I'm really glad that we had that optimism and naivete that encouraged us to start.
To help sort of combat this, what we decided to do was, I mean, obviously the way that most series are released is that they're all done every episode, and then you release these series as a whole. And what we've done is we're like, hey, we know we're going slow and we're sorry about it, but we do have limited resources. But what we'll do is we'll just finish one episode at a time, and we'll let that be out there as soon as we can, so that at least you can be watching. It might be months before the next episode comes out, but at least you can be watching something.
So. How is the whole series? Obviously we all haven't seen it, but you've mentioned you've screened it. How has it been received?
So I think there's two different camps, and the majority have been, three. The doctors, scientists, our community who's already aware of this, that we show it to at conferences. They're just incredibly supportive and encouraging. There is then the people who've never been exposed to it that we've shown are just shocked that they'd never heard of this theory and these therapies, and that your diet and lifestyle can make a difference in your cancer. And finally, there's a very small contingent that we've recently encountered who are maybe less, they're just like us, they're trying to protect people, but they're the ones who think that our cancer knowledge is done. And if you don't follow only the standard of care that's been determined already, there's nothing else out there for you. And so I think they're going to be the most difficult to challenge, to say, no, our cancer knowledge is evolving and there are these other therapies.
But you're not asking people to eliminate medical care.
Exactly. No. Follow your standard of care. But these therapies, for most people can use them. And to your point, not everybody can use everything, but they've been proven safe and effective, and they're not going to hurt you for the most, unless your doctor informs you that there's something you can't follow.
I mean, and I would say full disclosure here, we do talk to a couple of people who did forego standard of care to use only metabolic, ketogenic diets and fasting. But I mean, we say straight up, up front, like, hey, this was these people's choices. They did this, of their own accord. And we don't try and say that this is what anyone should do. This is just how these people decided to approach their cancer.
And the reason is, number one, they were all terminal, and they had, Pablo Kelly was estimated to have 12 to 15 months of life if he followed standard of care, versus 6 to 9 if he didn't. So he just chose not to. These are the people who've actually been published as case studies in medical journals. And so they're the first that we encountered and knew about. And then from there, the majority have used standard of care like me.
Yeah. Exactly. Just to sort of, throw that out there. There are a few people that we talk to that, have not continued with the standard of care.
Hey, you know what? That's their choice.
Exactly.
This is all about choice. This is all about broadening. This isn't about narrowing. Who knows? I mean, the whole 10 years down the road, it could be a mix between a metabolic and genetic theory. It could be a conglomerate, it could be, you don't know.
Yes.
So you want to offer people, there's no point in holding back the information. And if people are without hope, if they've been told that they only have a short time to live, there's no issue with offering different ways to talk about things and different talking points with people. The idea is to find a good person that you can trust and that's working for your better health.
Totally,
who are the guests?
Kathy,
who are the guests on your show? Can you reveal some of the names that you will be that we will be seeing?
Sure. I'll tell you, I'll give you about half, and then I'll let Maggie give you the other half. We've got Sam Apple, who wrote a book on Otto Warburg. Travis Christofferson, who sort of, I would say, wrote a sort of a layman's investigative journalist look at Dr. Thomas Seyfried's book. Dr. Thomas Seyfried, Jason Fung, Miriam Kalamian, a fantastic dietitian. You would go from there.
Jess Kelly, who wrote The Metabolic Approach to Cancer, along with Dr. Nasra Winters, Dr. Walter Longo, who's been one of the leaders in fasting for cancer for the last couple of decades out of USC, Dr. Charles Meekin, an oncologist, Dr. Angela Poff, who worked in Tom Seyfried's lab, Adrian Scheck, a brilliant brain cancer researcher. We added an MD PhD from Dr. Seyfried's lab, Thomas Duraj, and Paul Davies is an incredible physicist who's actually done a lot of work under the National Cancer Institute to help develop an outsider's perspective of cancer. And he is one of the originators of the atavistic model, which is also different from the metabolic, but just shows how many different ways and new ways there are to look at cancer.
Yeah.
Maybe it is going to be an approach from different methods for different people. I mean, we have to be open to that.
Exactly.
Yeah. One of the fun things that Maggie sort of mentioned was just this idea that it's people with these sort of late stage cancers that kind of have nothing to lose, where their doctors are telling them, hey, all you've got is palliative care. And, they just say, well, I'm just going to do something different. And I mean, these are just examples that are, it's not saying that this is the way what everyone should do, of course, but I mean, that there's people having amazing outcomes. And so we're just saying, hey, this is happening. And so we just need to look closer at what these people are doing.
Leave yourself open to these opportunities. So let's get into the meat and potatoes. How many episodes? Do you call them episodes, or how many?
Yes. Yeah. We're so it's a docuseries we're doing. We were going to try and do 5 episodes. We decided to lengthen it to 4 just for, make it shorter, get it out there quicker.
About how long are they each?
Each one is about an hour long.
Okay.
And so, each of the first 3 sort of focuses mainly on a scientist. So the first episode is mostly on Otto Warburg. The second episode focuses heavily on the work of Peter Peterson. And then the third episode focuses a lot on the work of Dr. Thomas Seyfried.
And then the fourth is a big focus on now these treatments are coming out and talking to the practitioners, the oncologists, dietitians, and so forth, and some of the thrivers who have been using these. And that one is very inspiring too.
And when is the docuseries going to be released?
Well, the world premiere, which will absolutely include episode 1 and an early version of episode 2, is in September of 2023. And we're doing this, I'm so excited, simultaneous with an online summit. And this includes over 3 dozen incredible practitioners and leaders in the field of cancer treatments that are lifestyle, nutritional, and metabolic. Because in the documentary, we're really able to focus on the science that's been established, having the scientists tell us, but this research moves so quickly. We want to have something a little bit faster where we can have the more qualified practitioners speaking directly to our audience. And so these will be together. I think of it as the docuseries is the why and the mechanics, the science behind it. And the summit is the how do you implement these therapies? Because as you say, it's different for everybody.
Yeah. And one of the reasons that this also came about is because we had this format where, we have to sort of explain the metabolic theory to people before we can tell you about how it can impact people that are dealing with cancer. And so just by the nature of the layout of the structure of the docuseries, it was going to be the final episode that talked about treatments. And of course, that's the most important thing to a lot of people, right? Is like they want the treatments. So we're like, wow, it's gonna be a while before that final episode gets out. And so this was sort of an alternative way to get that information out there a little bit quicker.
And so,
which I was just going to say that none of the information that's in our documentary is new, right? It is all out there.
It's curated.
These are all books that you can go and find, websites that you can look at, research that you can do. Please don't think that you have to wait for some sort of special information, some secret that's in our documentary. This stuff is all out there. What Maggie's blog, cancerv.me, is a great place to sort of find some of these resources. But I know that a lot of people, some people are a little frustrated that that's not out there yet. We're working on it, and then this summit is sort of a way to circumvent that a little bit.
And so
you go ahead. Sorry.
To differentiate, the series itself is going to be available on a donation basis, and you can get information on this on our website, cancerrevolution.film, so it's donation based. It'll help fund the upcoming episodes. We want to make sure that everybody who gives to this point still gets access to the upcoming episodes. The summit, on the other hand, does have a cost associated with it because we have to cover the platforms and all of that. And you can get more information on that and all the attendees at cancerrevolution.events. And Cancer Revolution is spelled with one R because it's also Cancer Evolution.
Interesting. Okay, so just to clarify, because other docuseries, they release everything, you buy it, it's yours for life. Is that sort of how this is going to be laid out, or are we buying
that
episode per episode?
So for now, you just get episode 1 as a rental, basically.
Okay.
And then at some point, all episodes will be released, and it'll be sort of a more traditional. You can go to Amazon and get all 4 episodes. To purchase or to rent, however you want to do it. But yeah, for the time being, just as we're releasing episode by episode, it just because of the logistics of it, you're just going to have to rent each episode.
And again, this is on a donation basis. We know how expensive cancer is, and so we want to make sure everybody has access to this.
Yeah, and we have started a foundation, the Revolution Foundation, and so the money that you're donating is literally going to fund future episodes. We're currently, sort of taking in about what's going out, so we're sort of staying even or breaking even right now. So that's working out great. But we're not in this to make money. We're not trying to make a documentary and sell it and then retire. That's not our goal.
Okay. And so September.
Yes.
September. Again, cancerrevolution.events.
Oh, wonderful. I really want to thank you so much for being on the show. It's so nice to have such a genuine people that are moving in a space that is, it's a hard space to be in. So I really wish you the best with everything. Everybody, I hope that you take, if you haven't had cancer, it doesn't mean you can't be involved in watching this, because as my very wise husband said, I've had cancer and I'm afraid of it recurring, and the rest of us are afraid of getting it in the first place. So prevention is, as a part of every health plan as it can be. So everybody, I think it's such a wise idea to, knowledge-based broadening is wonderful. So thank you very much, everybody. All the details of this will be in the show notes, so you'll be able to reach out to me if you need anything, or reach out to them. So again, thank you, Maggie and Brad, so much for being with us. Absolute pleasure.
Kathy, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much, Kathy.
Everybody, we will talk to you next week on The Health Hub.
You have been listening to The Health Hub, hosted by Kathy Biasi, here on Radio Maria Canada. Canada.